Why is it funny? A brief guide to understanding and creating art-related comics. So if you've ever read the newspaper or seen a comic strip or maybe just a one-panel comic, you know that it's an illustration meant to be funny, and there's a little bit behind why it's funny. So that's what we're going to explore today. So in particular, we're going to talk about what makes an art or art history related comic funny. So let's take a look at the one right here. It's called A Brush with Death, and the one brush is saying, looks like he had a stroke. Well, although death by stroke is not funny in real life, this is funny because it's a play on words. It's a pun. So if you said that you have a brush with death, it means that you came really close to like a really bad experience. It doesn't actually mean a physical brush like a paintbrush. And another word for a line made by paint on a paintbrush is called a brush stroke, a stroke. But we also know that a stroke is a bad medical occurrence that could lead to death. So while the background behind this is not funny, the play on words is funny. So they're using a play on brush and stroke to make a joke about why this paintbrush is laying on the floor. Sometimes knowing why it's funny actually relates to your knowledge of the subject. So many times, if you understand, it means that you have a greater amount of knowledge about that particular subject. So take a look at the comic here to the left. It says, Michelangelo front and center. And it looks like it might be Michelangelo's mother. Now, why is she mad? Why is she calling him over? Well, he's drawn on the wall, right? Like little kids do. No, but he's drawn on the ceiling. So why is that funny? If you look at the work on the right, this is the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel done by Michelangelo. He painted on the ceiling. So it's funny because young Michelangelo might have gotten in trouble for drawing on the ceiling. While it's not that realistic, it's funny if you know what the artist is famous for. Then you get it. And that moment when you get a comic is what really makes it funny. All right, let's try this one. Now, if you have no knowledge of modern art whatsoever or surrealism, you might not get this comic. So there's a woman holding an apple, and she says, "Don't forget your apple," and she's handing it towards this man in a suit and a hat. So you might be like, all right, so his wife is giving him lunch? Like, I don't get it. But it's about the painting, The Son of Man, right here by Rene Magritte on the right. So this is a surrealist painting where a man in a suit with that specific suit and hat is depicted with this apple like floating in front of his face. So if you knew about Rene Magritte, or you knew about surrealism, or if you've ever seen this painting in your life, you would get why the comic is funny. Okay, what about this one? This might be a little more well known. The comic is called The Salvador Deli, ha ha ha, and everyone is served floppy sandwiches and wiggly cups and dripping cookies. And so you might think like, okay, is the food bad? Like you might not get it. But if you know Salvador Dali, you'd recognize him by that mustache that the cook is wearing, and his artwork, Persistence of Memory, over there on the right, is very famous and shows melting clocks. So the artist of the comic thought it might be funny that if Salvador had a deli, get it? Salvador Dali's deli. If he had a deli, maybe his sandwiches would be droopy too. All right, one more. This is actually a scene from the original Toy Story. If you've ever seen it, Mr. Potato Head's trying to make a joke. He says, "Hey, Ham, look, I'm Picasso." And Ham goes, I don't get it. And Mr. Potato Head goes, "You uncultured swine." So it's funny because if you've ever seen a Picasso portrait, like the one on the right, you'll know that in the Cubist style, Picasso liked to rearrange the figures on a person's face. So what Mr. Potato Head has done is, if you've ever played with a potato head, you can take out the facial features and put them back in. So he's rearranged his face, and it reminds him of Picasso. And see, now poor Ham doesn't get it because he doesn't have that knowledge base. That's why he's like, "You uncultured swine," because he's calling him uncultured because he doesn't know about art. So now does that make more sense? It's all starting to make sense. You should be sitting there going, "Oh, I get it now," to each of these. And it's that moment when you get it that makes it funny, or should make it funny at least. So how can you begin to think about making a comic that's actually funny? There's a few ways, many more that I'm presenting here, but these are just a few that I came up with. First of all, thinking about puns. Puns are words with double meanings, just like brush and stroke from the comic we talked about earlier. Another funny thing you could do with puns is like a phrase. For example, "Time flies when you're having fun." It means that time is speedy or quick. But if you illustrated that, you'd draw a little clock maybe, or a watch with wings flying away. So you're using the pun to make it funny. There used to be this great children's book series called Amelia Bedelia, and it was about this maid named Amelia Bedelia, and she took everything literally. And so they said, dress the turkey and fill it with stuffing that has dates in it. So she took the turkey and she put baby clothes on it. She dressed the turkey, and then she cut dates out of a calendar and stuffed them in the turkey because she took everything really literally. So those books are full of puns, and that's why they're funny. So you could use a pun. Sometimes people who create comics link things with modern life or current events that's funny and timely, meaning current. So take a look at this one right here. I love this one. So we see a man, and it's actually Cezanne. It's supposed to be Cezanne. So if you recognize the painting and you recognize the man, you would know it's Cezanne who's painting a still life. Even if you don't know it's Cezanne and you've ever painted a still life or have seen a still life ever, you might get it. So he's thinking, people need to know what I'm eating right now. And it's captioned before Instagram. And that's supposed to be funny because people who use Instagram really, really like to take pictures of their food for some reason. So before Instagram, it's making fun of, like, maybe that's why people painted still life, because, you know, people need to know what they're eating. It's funny. This one's called Modern Art, so it's making fun of our modern age. So it shows like an art class, and there's a kid that presumably looks like a teenager with his baggy jeans and backwards cap. And he says, okay, so how do I get this thing to upload the image? Like, it's a canvas. You paint it, silly. But it's kind of making fun of teenagers, like they don't know how to do anything without technology. They don't know how to do anything maybe the hard way. So it's actually making fun of modern life, honestly. And it's one of those that just makes your face palm. You're like, oh gosh, once you get it. A modern interpretation of the painting, almost like a meme, if you've ever seen a meme, can be funny. So this is just a little clip or a little section of an ancient Egyptian picture, and someone captioned it, "First high five ever recorded," which is funny because to you and me in our culture, we think of like two people standing like this going to give each other a high five, as something that's relevant to us. But in ancient Egypt, who knows what they were doing? Maybe one was worshiping the other. Maybe they were waving hello. Maybe they were incorporating a gesture that we don't even know about. But someone saw it and thought, ha, that looks like a high five. So they made it into a joke. You could also poke fun at the artwork or art style. So here, why is this funny? All right, we see a maid. We know she's a maid because there's enough visual information. She has a maid uniform on. And she has a mop and cleaning supplies. And she's attempting to clean some abstract painting, which is probably supposed to look like Jackson Pollock, maybe. Or just abstract expressionist painting in general, because maybe the artist is poking fun at the art style, thinking it just looks like a mess, something that should be cleaned up. All right, so that brings us to the end, and I'll leave you with this last comic. This poor little Scissors is saying, "No one wants to run with me," and his little friends, the pencil and the eraser, are going, "Wee!" Because, you know, don't run with scissors. Like people, adults, children, people aren't supposed to run with scissors in their hand, but the poor little Scissors wants to run with his little office supply friends. And that's why it's funny.